Today, we're going to crack a psychological truth code. We're talking about a super clever, you might even say downright deceptive tool that was designed for one thing and one thing only: getting the truth out of people who have every reason to hide it.
Okay, be honest with me for a second. Have you ever been filling out a form and thought, yeah, I'll just say I go to the gym a little more often than I actually do? Of course, it's a totally natural human impulse to want to present the best version of ourselves. But that tiny, relatable impulse, well, for scientists trying to get accurate data, it's a massive, massive problem.
And this brings us to what researchers call the honesty problem. I mean, how do you get truly truthful answers when you're asking about sensitive stuff? And believe me, this isn't just some boring academic puzzle. Solving it has huge, real-world consequences for things like public health and policy.
So the fancy term for this phenomenon is social desirability bias. And it's really simple. It just means we're all wired to avoid looking bad. When a researcher asks you how often you smoke, you're not just giving them a number, you're managing your public image. You know smoking is viewed as undesirable, so there's this powerful pull, whether it's conscious or not, to maybe fudge the numbers a bit. And that one little bias can throw a giant wrench into really important research. And when I say a giant wrench, I mean a costly one. $60 billion. That's the estimated annual cost in the US alone from healthcare and lost productivity because of smoking. To make good policies, to design programs that actually help people, you need the real numbers. If your data is off from the start, your solutions are going to miss the mark completely. So getting honest data isn't just an academic exercise, it's a multi-billion-dollar problem. So what do you do about this? Well, back in the 1970s, some researchers got really creative. They came up with a solution that honestly sounds like it's straight out of an old sci-fi movie. Their thinking was, okay, if people won't tell the truth to another person, maybe, just maybe, they'll tell it to a machine that knows all. It's called the bogus pipeline. And the name is just perfect, because this supposed pipeline to the truth, it's completely 100% totally fake. It is not a real lie detector. It's more like an elaborate piece of theater. The whole goal isn't actually to detect lies, it's to create a situation where telling the truth feels like the only logical thing to do. So here's how they pulled off this brilliant little con. It's like a 3-act play. First, the setup. You, the participant, walk in and see this impressive-looking machine, and you're told it's a perfect, foolproof lie detector. Next comes the proof. The researcher hooks you up and asks you a few questions they secretly already know your answers to, and bam, the machine seemingly reads your mind. At this point, you're sold. You think, wow, this thing is legit. And then, only after you're totally convinced you can't get away with a lie, they hit you with the real questions. The whole game has changed. And this right here is the genius of the psychological trap they've set. Suddenly, you're faced with a choice. Do you tell the truth and admit to a socially undesirable habit? Or do you lie, get caught by the machine, and be revealed as not just a smoker, but a liar too? All of a sudden, just being an honest smoker starts to look like the much, much better option. So you'd think, problem solved. The bogus pipeline seemed like the perfect silver bullet for researchers, and the first results were amazing. But as more and more scientists started using it, the picture got, well, really confusing. The magic trick, it turned out, didn't always work, and nobody was quite sure why. And this is where the real mystery starts. On the one hand, you had studies that found the bogus pipeline worked like a charm, getting more people to admit they smoked. But then you had other studies that found it made zero difference whatsoever. You can imagine how baffling this was for the scientific community. Was this brilliant technique just a fluke, a one-hit wonder? Or was there some hidden variable that everyone was missing? To get to the bottom of this mystery, researchers needed a new kind of tool. Just running one more study wasn't going to cut it. They needed a way to zoom out, to look at all the previous research at once and see the big picture. They basically needed to bring in a scientific super sleuth. That super sleuth is called a meta-analysis. And the best way to think about it is like a detective reviewing case files from a dozen different precincts. Any single file might be confusing or even contradictory, but when you lay all of them out on a giant table together, suddenly patterns start to emerge. That's exactly what a meta-analysis does with data. It statistically combines the results from tons of different studies to find the overall trend and, even more importantly, to figure out why the results were all over the place. So, they ran this massive meta-analysis. We're talking 30 different studies with nearly 6,500 people. And after all that, it boiled down to one tiny number, 0.05. Now, I know what you're thinking. That looks ridiculously small. But here's the thing. The fact that it was positive at all was huge. It proved the bogus pipeline wasn't a fluke, it does work.
But that small number also confirmed the real problem. Its effect was super inconsistent. So the question wasn't if it worked anymore. It was when and why.
And this is where the meta-analysis truly shine. It was by comparing the studies that worked with the ones that failed that the researchers finally cracked the code. They isolated the critical factors, the 3 secret ingredients you need to unlock the bogus pipeline's power.
All right, key number 1, credibility is king. You have to sell the performance. The whole trick falls apart if the participants don't actually believe the machine can catch them, and the data was crystal clear here. When researchers just told people, hey, this is a lie detector, the effect was pretty weak. But when they used a vivid, convincing presentation, like a live demonstration or a slick video, the effectiveness shot through the roof. You gotta make them believe the magic is real.
Key number 2 is all about pressure. See, the bogus pipeline is a tool designed to counteract that social pressure to lie and look good, so it only really works if that pressure is there to begin with. Compared to a standard, face-to-face questionnaire, the pipeline was highly effective, but when they compared it to a method that guaranteed total anonymity, which takes the pressure off, well then the pipeline didn't really add any extra benefit. The takeaway is simple: no pressure, no pipeline.
Now the final key is a little more subtle, but it might just be the most important one of all. It's about statistical power. It's about knowing exactly where to look for the effect. Imagine you try this experiment in a population where almost nobody smokes. Even if the pipeline works perfectly on the few people who do, their honest confessions just get washed out in a sea of people who are already telling the truth. It's like trying to hear a whisper at a rock concert. The meta-analysis found that the most successful studies did something absolutely brilliant. First, they used a quick biochemical test, like a saliva test, to identify who the actual smokers were. Then, they focused their analysis only on that group. By tuning out the noise from the non-smokers, they could finally see the pipeline's true power, clear as day.
So, with the case finally cracked, the researchers could write it all down. A clear prescription, a set of instructions for any future scientist who wanted to use this incredibly powerful but very tricky tool. And here it is, the 3 commandments of the bogus pipeline. 1. Make it believable. Use a live demo or a video to really sell the machine's power. 2. Use it under pressure. This is a tool specifically for situations where that social desirability bias is running high. And 3. Target the right group. Focus your analysis on the people who actually have a reason to lie. You follow those 3 rules, and the pipeline will deliver the truth.
The bogus pipeline is such a fascinating window into our psychology. It's this powerful reminder that we're all constantly, in small ways, managing the impression we make on the world. And while this very specific, very deceptive technique helped us get a truer count of smokers, it leaves us with a much bigger question. In a world that's just full of social pressures, what other important hidden truths about our beliefs, our biases, and our own behaviors are just waiting to be uncovered?